Hello and welcome to Customer Experience Leaders Chat by Nicereply, where we talk to support professionals from all over the world and discuss what's behind their team's success. This interview is brought to you by Nicereply, an all-in-one customer satisfaction tool that helps you measure and improve the quality of your customer service. My name is Craig Stoss, and I'm here with Paul Milashauskas, VP of Customer Operations at Omnisend. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, Craig. Thanks for having me.
Paul, I really wanted to talk to you today about the evolution of building a support organization within a startup. So maybe we should start with, how does a small startup determine at what point to start the support organization?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question, and something that we at Omnisend had to decide about 5 or 6 years ago. I would say the mindset of the support organization should be there since day one. And that will definitely help the company out when growing and when building the whole team. But if you can, you should start doing that as soon as possible. And I prefer doing that by just looking at the numbers and the data. What does that tell you? So it's a really simple way for a really small startup to just set up an email inbox or set up a phone number and just track how many emails, how many phone calls are you getting throughout the day, at what time are you getting those, and how difficult the questions are. Like how long does it take you to answer those? Because while you're a small startup, obviously you yourself as a founder or somebody from the development or anybody else will be taking those questions and will be answering them. So you definitely want to track that. And once you're at the point where you understand that you can no longer perfectly do what you're meant to do, this is when you should look for your first hire. And I would say that first hire definitely has to be somebody with an experience, because that is going to be the person you're going to build your team around. So obviously you want to have somebody who knows what the deal is and how to build a team, how to do support, and so on. And it's really important to not just think through the numbers, but also look at who your customer is and grow along with the customer. So your first hire might be decided upon the numbers, but then you have to look at the customer. Is the customer experienced? What sort of questions are they asking? Do you want more technical employees, or do you need somebody with more empathy? And this way you will be able to identify who exactly you should be focusing on. And yeah, definitely growing with the customer once you're looking at your second, third, fifth, 10th hire for the customer support team. Along with that, growing with the complexity of the product is really important as well, because when you're just a startup, your product might be pretty simple. It's easy to understand. And this is something we had at Omnisend. When we started out, we were just a simple email marketing platform, and we grew to a fully fledged email and SMS marketing automation platform. So obviously our customer grew as well along with us. And the complexity of the questions grew with that. So you definitely want to get more experienced people on the team. You need them to have more knowledge and so on. But in the first days, it was quite simple. It wasn't that difficult to understand. We had to answer pretty easy and quite standard questions. So obviously it wasn't that hard. So growing along with the customer, growing along with the complexity of the product is something you have to look at, and obviously looking at the numbers and data.
Yes, so a lot of logic in there around making sure that the customer needs are being met. You mentioned that the first hire needs to have a lot of background in building teams, and you're trying to hire for a different profile. What do you think differs between that first or maybe even the second hire and then subsequent hires after that? What are the key attributes you look for when you're building out that team wider?
Yeah, so one thing is the experience of the person, and maybe experience in building a team or working in that position. But I would say just looking at the whole support team, I prefer to look at it as a sports team, and I myself like to play and watch basketball. So I often like look at it as a basketball team. You have your power forwards, you have your centers, you have your shooting guards, point guards, etc. Different people with different traits, with different experiences, but they are all playing for the same goal. So obviously, your first hire has to be somebody who knows what they're doing. But later on, I would say my top three things that I would be focusing on is empathy, analytical skills, and being a team player. Empathy allows them to better understand and get in the shoes of the customer. And this is definitely the most important trait of customer support person. Not necessarily something you like really quickly identify, but definitely something really important. Then analytical skills help that person to quicker resolve the question, find workarounds and stuff like that. And being a team player is important regardless if you're a first hire or a 10th hire. And that's probably coming from the fact that I'm looking at everything through the sports team perspective, but in the support field, you have to work with along with other support agents. You have to work with other teams. You have to rely each on each other. And this is a really, really important trait. What is really important is to celebrate these things and also to understand the weaknesses of the team players. So you obviously will have somebody with more empathy and some people with less empathy, some with better analytical skills and some with worse. You have to understand who these people are, and that will allow you to better grow the team.
So continuing with the sports team analogy, just as your hiring profiles evolve, your goals evolve. You might start off learning simpler plays on the court and then advance as your team gets more comfortable with each other and more skilled. How do you see this evolution taking place within your support organization?
I would say the goal, like for me personally, the goal is always the same. I would say I always, like in the past and now, I see the same goal. We always have to make the customer happy. That's the main goal that we're focusing for. And you start with simpler metrics. And I would say like you should not be focusing on really high goals. Just make sure that you're covering everything and that you're keeping the customer happy. So that means you have to just focus on the quality. And focusing on the quality since day one is probably the most important thing to have. Like everybody is going to forgive you the inability to be quick, but nobody is going to be forgiving you for providing inaccurate answers or coming up with solutions that don't work and stuff like that. When growing, obviously you want to start being faster, you want to start being quicker. And that is going to be a huge, huge challenge because now your goal is sort of shifting. You're already okay with the quality that you provide, but you want to be faster. And that is a huge challenge because you have to focus on the quality, plus on top you have to be quicker. And adding more people to the team does not actually mean that you will be quicker. It might slow you down actually. So it's really important to continue with the pace and then to start shifting from the quality, not from the quality, keeping the quality there, but also shifting on the speed, how quickly you can provide the solutions, how quickly you can react to any inquiries coming from the customer. And too often customer support is frowned upon due to either of these reasons, but in most cases it's going to be the quality. So in the early days, I would just focus on the quality and whatever metrics you have to measure that.
I really like the approach that you take where you say the customers might forgive you for speed, but they're not going to forgive you for the quality of the answers. One way to improve that speed as you evolve a team is through things like AI and chatbots. How do you see these pieces being added into the evolution of a support team?
Yeah, personally, if you would have asked this question about half a year or a year ago, I would say never. Now I have a different understanding, and thanks to our director of customer support, who definitely challenged me on this one. I changed my mind and I shifted to a friendlier approach towards AI and chatbots. Basically, when exactly I would say it's you have to, once again, you have to measure everything, and once you're getting a lot of repetitive questions, questions that can be answered with the same answer every single time, this is when you should be starting to look at the number of the questions you're getting. And if you need a person to dedicate the whole day answering these questions, this is a good time to look into chatbots, because a person should be working on more complex cases, should be helping out with something custom. When it comes to really predefined answers, that's not something anybody enjoys doing on a daily basis. Plus, on top, the customer should not be waiting for 10, 20 minutes or half an hour if there is a huge load to get an answer. Where can they find their invoices, for example? It's a predefined answer. It's always the same, and the question is always the same. It might depend on the phrasing, but it's still going to be the same. And now I feel like it's definitely a win-win situation for the customer and for the support team. You can be quick and you can react quickly. The chatbot is there to respond to these simple questions, repetitive questions with repetitive answers. And the customer is getting great experience. We're seeing some really good numbers in the resolution time and the quality of the resolution. When, for example, the chatbot is not able to handle that conversation, is immediately handed over to the teammate, and this is something that I feel like everybody should be considering, not just using chatbots, but using them as a help to the customer support team to take the load off with the repetitive questions, and then freeing up their hands and making sure that customer support agents can focus on more complex cases and helping out with something more difficult, rather than just telling where to find one thing or the other. And yeah, I think that one thing is really important to understand, that there is going to be a necessity of constant upkeep. So you will definitely need somebody overlooking these chatbots and making sure that the content over there and that the answers over there are correct. All in all, at the end of the day, I would prefer not putting too many things and not giving too many responsibilities for chatbots, because people will still prefer to talk to people.
Yeah, so chatbots can be used effectively, but shouldn't be overused. It makes a lot of sense. People do prefer to talk to people. One of the final evolutions of a support team is to start looking at remote or outsourced teams. How can these types of teams be used effectively to bolster a support organization?
Yeah, at Omnisend, we are actually a remote organization ourselves. We work from 5 countries, 2 continents, and we're about 100 people right now. It's definitely challenging, and it has its own negative sides, but it brings a lot of benefits, especially if the company has the right attitude. It's from my perspective, I think it's really important to understand that if you're working with a remote support team, or even if it's an outsourced remote support team, that's extremely, especially important in such case, is to include them in everything. Meetings, share of knowledge, celebrations, achievements, sharing the culture of the company and the values of the company. Because otherwise what you will end up is just another team that does not necessarily know what sort of a tone the company should have, what sort of a tone should be used in the conversations, how to handle one or the other quite complex issue, not necessarily just looking from the technical side, but looking from human side, and not considering that team just a satellite. regardless of where the team is, it definitely needs to feel like they're part of the team. And I feel like we have the benefit within the company. This is the huge benefit of, like, regardless of where you're working from, you're still part of the team. And this means that the whole organization has to dedicate themselves. The whole organization has to have the right values, and the whole organization has to understand that regardless if it's just one team or if the whole organization is working this way, there has to be measures to help this team out. So, like, looking from our perspective, it hasn't been a challenge. Definitely some of the questions were there that wouldn't have been if the team was here, like in one single place. But eventually it became a benefit because we are able to offer 24/7 customer support, which would be so much more difficult for us if it was just people in one office. And also this also meant quite a lot of strength while becoming a fully remote organization as well.
Paul, the evolution you shared here, starting out from your first hire and the skill sets that person needs, and then evolving that as you grow the team into empathy, making sure that the quality is always good, and then increasing the speed over time, adding in your chat bots and your AIs, and then going into 24/7. This is just a great insight that can be used by anyone starting a support team. And I want to thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Craig.
And thank you all for listening to Customer Experience Leaders Chat by Nicereply with today's guest, Paul Miloshauskas from Omnisend. Please make sure to check out other support interviews and more quality content at nicereply.com.